Hello, 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 and welcome to the show tonight, the Fix My Heart Show. I am so excited about this show tonight. I want to thank each and every one of you each week for tuning in to the show. I greatly appreciate it, and I want you to know that you are greatly appreciated. So tonight, we're going to talk about coping mechanisms. What is a coping mechanism? And then we're going to talk about some of the things that are coping mechanisms. So over the last few weeks, we've been talking about offenses. And I told you that an offense is when something is said or did to you that caused you to be angry, upset, or hurt based off of your perspective. And when we don't deal with our offenses, I told you how our offenses become wounds. And we all know that wounds hurt. And when we are hurt, we always want to be comforted. So we take on different things in order to comfort that hurt. And the things that we take on to comfort that hurt, they are called coping mechanisms. So what is a coping mechanism? A coping mechanism is the way that you handle stress, trauma, or brokenness in your life. So it is the things that you take on in order to deal with that pain. When we are wounded, we always want to comfort that pain. So instead of us actually dealing with the wounds, instead of us actually dealing with the offense, we'll sometimes say, I'm just going to forget about it. I'm just not going to talk about it. I'm just not going to think about it. And all those things are coping mechanisms. When the truth is, everything that happens to us or is done or said to us stays with us. We are like a garden. And so everything in our life is seed. And when seeds do one or two things, they are dealt with or they are plucked up. Or they stay in us and they begin to grow. So we got to learn how to deal with the things that occur in our life. Everything that we go through, every time we're wounded, every time we've been broken, every time we are offended, we have got to learn how to properly deal with those things. Because the truth is, if we don't deal with those things, they don't go away. They stay inside of us. And like I said, we are like a garden. So as they stay inside of us, they grow. And they attract the same type of things to them. So if you keep experiencing this negative thing, that lets you know that there's somewhere you've been wounded, you've been hurt, and you are drawing those negative things to you. So let's talk about some different coping mechanisms on tonight. I want you to really think about your life when I go over these different coping mechanisms and think about the pain. Think about where you've been offended. Think about where you've been violated. Think about where you've been hurt. And have you really dealt with that? Have you really dealt with it, or have you taken on something in order to make yourself feel better? Remember, pain always seeks to be comforted. Pain always seeks to be comforted. So in some way, if you've experienced pain in your life and you haven't healed from it, if you haven't dealt with it, you are finding a way to deal with it, to cope with it, thus coping mechanisms. So one coping mechanism is denial. Sometimes when things happen to us, we deny that it happened. Somebody may say, girl, you remember when this happened to you? And you be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because that thing was so painful to you, you denied that it even happened to you. We have got to face what has happened to us, and we cannot get in a mode of denial. So in your mind, you're thinking, well, if I just deny it, this is going to make me better. But the truth is, it is not making you better. That thing is still on the inside of your spirit, your soul, your heart. It's still there. It ain't gone nowhere. Just by you denying it, the fact is it happened. So when things happen, deal with them. And I know sometimes it's not always easy to deal with things right away. But I want to encourage you to learn the habit of dealing with things as quickly as possible. Because when we refuse to deal with things, then we open up the door for the enemy to bring other things into our life. And we don't want to do that. We want to be people that are healed. We want to be people that are whole. We want to be people that are prospering in every area of our life. So denial. So my question to you tonight is, are you operating in a state of denial? Have you denied some major trauma, some major offense has happened to you? Are you in denial about it? If so, I just want to encourage you to really begin to stop denying it and really begin to work that thing out. Because the truth is, it happened. So then we have avoidance. Avoidance is when we avoid people or situations that have happened to us. So if someone has dealt with the same thing or something similar, you'll try to avoid it. That's why sometimes when you see somebody coming, you're like, oh, y'all, I'm gone. I'm gone. I'm not dealing with her because you've been wounded. You've been offended by that person. And instead of facing her, instead of talking it out, instead of working it out, you just rather say deuces. So you leave, you avoid it. And you're thinking that by you leaving and avoiding that, that's going to fix things. But the truth is it doesn't. It doesn't, because that stuff is still on the inside of you. So I want to encourage you to stop using avoidance as a way of dealing with your issues. The truth is, you got to deal with your issues head on. And no, it's not always easy dealing with stuff head on. But I'm going to tell you, on the other side of it is victory. So we have got to learn how to stop taking on these different things and deal with our things head on. Because the truth is, we are all broken people outside of Jesus Christ. And even with him, we are all on a journey to healing. We're all on a journey to getting cleaned up, because when we were in the world, we were filthy. We engaged in a lot of things that left us broken, that left us wounded. And so when we come into the kingdom, it is to help free us. Jesus said in Isaiah 61 and Luke 4 and 18, he came to heal the brokenhearted. So healing is for us. And so healing is a process, and healing is a journey, and it doesn't take place overnight. So you got to begin to recognize the areas that you are not healed in, and the things that you are taking on outside of what Jesus requires or has set for us. So the next thing, suppression. Sometimes when things happen to us, especially very traumatic things, we'll suppress and not want to feel like it happened. So I want to encourage you, don't suppress. Sometimes we have urges and we suppress those urges. Now, if there are urges that are negative, then of course we want to suppress those things. But sometimes we want to deny that things happen, and we got to get out of that. We got to get out of it, and we got to face what has happened to us. And here's another one, substitution. Now, this is one that a lot of us engage in, substitution. And what I mean by substitution is we substitute one thing for another. So one good example of substitution is if you've been in a broken relationship and you've just gotten out of that relationship, because most of us can relate to this. And instead of dealing with the pain and hurt and all the junk that went on in that relationship, somebody else comes along, you go hop right into another relationship. The truth is, you did substitution. You never dealt with what was wrong in that first relationship. So in that second relationship, that same junk is going to begin to show up. So instead of really dealt how you got hurt, how you got offended, how you felt, you just substituted it for another person. And substitution is not good, because you are not dealing with it. So that's how you can get in relationship after relationship after relationship that are broken. And then you're feeling bad, because you're not truly dealing with the issues that occurred in those relationships. And then you find yourself attracting that same junk over and over and over, because you refuse to deal with how you got into that situation the first time. So I want to encourage you, stop substituting and begin to deal with the different things that occur in your life. You got to deal with what happened to you. Substitution is not the answer. So that's another one, substitution. Then we have intellectualization. And that is when we take the emotion out of things and we just begin to look at the facts and logic. So we begin to rationalize it, and we begin to use our intellect to try to make up for what we're feeling. So for an example, say if you've walked through a divorce, you'd be like, well, instead of saying how it hurts you and everything, you would say, well, 50% of the people getting divorces, marriages ain't lasting in the way I'm going to be all right. Instead of saying the truth, look, I'm hurt, I'm broken, and I got some issues that I need to work on. You begin to rationalize it. You begin to use your intellect in order to make you feel better. So with these coping mechanisms, all they do is, I like to call it like this. Coping mechanisms is temporary pleasure with a false sense of comfort. Because the truth is, those coping mechanisms does temporarily give us pleasure at the time. But the truth is, it never deals with the root of the issue. It never deals with the root of the issue. So another thing, another coping mechanism would be self-harm. And in the category of self-harm, there are a lot of different things that fall into it. So one of the self-harm things is drugs. Sometimes when a person has been sexually violated or very wounded or beaten, and something very traumatic has happened to them as a child, when they get older, they may turn to drugs in order to stop the memories, in order to feel better, because those things constantly pop up in their mind. So they begin to take those drugs in order to make them feel better, when the truth is those drugs aren't working. Now, the truth is those drugs feel good to their flesh. So remember, I said a temporary pleasure with a false sense of comfort, because it feels good to them. But the truth is, it's really not comforting them, because at the end of the day, when they come off of that high, they're going to still have those same feelings. So we need to learn how to deal with the stuff, because the truth is you're going to have to deal with it one way or another. You're thinking because you're not dealing with it directly, you won't deal with it. But the truth is you're still dealing with it. And then when you deal with it your way, you begin to deal with it in harmful ways. But there's an answer to every pain that we will ever have to endure, and that's the cross. He was beaten, he was bruised so that we could receive healing. And the word says, by his stripes we are healed. So we don't have to walk in this world full of pain, full of regret, full of anger. We can go to the Father because healing is there for us. So another self-harm technique would be promiscuous sex. You know, a lot of time when women have been rejected and abandoned, and I can only speak for a woman, it happens to men too, but I can speak for a woman's perspective, is that we take on sex in order to make us feel good, to comfort us. We're thinking we exchange sex for love. And the truth is, it's not. You know, instead of us really dealing with how our mother didn't love us, or how our father didn't love us, or how we felt abandoned, or how we felt rejection, we turn to men for sex in order to comfort us. And the truth is, you will never be comforted, because then you begin to take on all types of things. You begin to take on that person's demons. So that's how you start acting like that same person that you slept with, because you begin to take on everything that's in them. So that's another self-harm coping mechanism. Another self-harm coping mechanism would be cutting. Some people cut themselves and feel the physical pain, trying to cover up the emotional pain that they are in. And I've seen people, I've came in contact with people that have had it. And so if you ever see somebody with a lot of little marks, they are cutters. And they feel like that physical pain is helping them, when the truth is, it's not. It is harming them. So I want to encourage each and every one of you to learn how to handle the offenses and the wounds that have occurred in your life. And coping mechanisms can sometimes be temporarily okay, because sometimes right then you may not be able to deal with it. But you got to learn how to deal with this stuff as soon as possible. So if your life is busy, if you're at work, sometimes we are in a place where we can't go there emotionally. And I've experienced this before. I've felt some type of way at work, and I couldn't deal with it right then. So I had to wait till later on till I got home, because work called, duty called. So sometimes we are in environments and places where we can't deal with it right away. But I want to encourage you, you have got to deal with stuff as soon as possible. And the word talks about, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. You need to get that thing taken care of as soon as possible, because when we don't, we open the door for the enemy to come in and to bring more of that junk into our lives. So I want to encourage you to deal with your wounds, to deal with when you've been offended, and learn how to handle them properly, and stop taking on these different coping mechanisms of avoidance, of denial, of suppression, of repression, of intellectualization, of self-harm, and stop taking on those things. There's many more out there, but I just wanted to name a few on tonight. Stop taking on those things and seek true healing. And true healing only comes from God alone, because he has the answer to everything. So if you've been wounded, if you've been hurt, I encourage you to go to God. And how does that look? Father, I've been hurt. I've been wounded. God, that really hurt what she said. That really hurt what she did. So God, I ask you to heal me. And God, I walk in forgiveness, because they are made in your likeness and your image. And so I ask you to help me to overcome this. And he promises to. The truth is, when physical things happen to us, when the physical thing ends, it has ended in that moment. The only place that it still exists is in the supernatural realm. The emotional, the mental. That's the only place it still exists. And it still exists there because you make the choice to keep it there, because you don't deal with it. So if something physically happened to you over 20 years ago, it's gone in the physical. Some people may have scars to remind them, but the truth is, the open wound or the open cut, or when you got slapped across the face, that pain is no longer there. But it's still there in your mind if you keep it there. So I encourage you to be healed. My desire is to see you free. My desire to see your heart healed, and to really see you live the life that God has called you to be. Thank you, each and every one of you, for joining me on tonight. Be blessed. Bye-bye.